Right, welcome to the last session. Quite a few people have had to leave in order to get flights. Many of those who remain are a bit tired and have had many ideas bombarding them in the last few days. So we decided that instead of having a long session of talking heads expounding their ideas at length, we're going to have quite a snappy session to round up the conference. And we've asked our 4 hunter-gatherers, not scavengers, as some people call them, that's not a nice term, our 4 hunter-gatherers who have moved through the panels thinking about what fresh insights are we gaining through this conference. And we're going to be hearing a bit back from them. But there's also going to be lots of opportunity for everyone else to add. So instead of hard talk, this is not soft talk, but the idea is that it's quick talk. And that we're not going to be having long debates about points of agreement and disagreement, but rather trying to surface ideas, pull through some of the ideas that emerged from the panels, either fresh empirical insights, new analytical points, questions, and so on. And so I'm going to ask each of our 4 hunter-gatherers to talk about, firstly, what are the fresh new insights that have been generated in this conference? For them, what stands out? And then open it up and ask you to add. Of course, they haven't been at every panel, so there might be many more things that you would like to add. Then we're going to go on to a second question, which is, what then are the big unresolved debates that have been surfaced and that deserve to be engaged with further? A third question we're going to give a little bit of attention to is, what are the gaps, where are the silences that are not adequately addressed here? And finally, what does all of this signify for research agendas, for agendas for activism, and for agendas for policy? We touched on some of that in the morning, but I think that there are a few further thoughts that people would like to share. And then in closing, we're going to have a vote on whether land grabbing is to be reformed or stopped. No, I'm kidding. There's not going to be any voting at the end. We're not aiming to come to a point of agreement or conclusion, but to have a sense of what it is that we've learned and what fresh ideas that we've got. So, very briefly, we're trying for 2 minutes each. Just well, trying for 2 minutes means something a bit longer, but Dzodzi, please.
How very scary, 2 minutes. Yeah, thanks, Ruth. I think it's almost an anticlimax to sit here and try and discipline what to me has been really a wild and energizing event, listening to all sorts of new things with different preoccupations, postings, and so on. I thought I had the particular privilege of listening to somebody who works with a private equity company explain what their motivations were, and to hear that for them the long term is 5 to 7 years. I used to think the long term was 15 years at least. So that was something very profound for me. And I also took a risk. I was attending panels according to my level of ignorance about them. So I went to the panels I knew very, very little about. And I also was very struck by the particular interest in Africa as a place to make money. And I thought to myself, the best kept secret about Africa is finally out in the open. And I didn't know when this happened, when it became clear that Africa was a place where people were making a lot of profits. In terms of insights, I thought, again, this may not be new to many of you, but I thought the idea of embedding our analysis, whether we are looking at micro processes or national processes or global processes, in a framework which is historical and structural, but at the same time manages to account for the discourses of legitimation and the strategies of exclusion, as well as differential impacts and social differentiation, but also environmental issues was really important. Somebody here called it a cultural political economy analysis. I don't know whether such a creature exists, and I imagine that it raises all sorts of questions about whether it will be easy to do, what kinds of questions we should be asking, and what kinds of methodologies we should be deploying for such an analysis. But I really think it's a very important insight, which I hope we will carry home with us. I also learned that focusing solely on agricultural land can obscure other processes contributing to dispossession. For example, the issue of reserving forests, conservation areas, carbon trading, but also very profoundly the idea of water. I learned today that there was blue, green, and virtual water, and I thought that it really brought some really critical insights to our thinking about land, because in doing our research on land deals, we are not taking into account the importance of the Volta River in the acquisitions. And in fact, somebody was suggesting that water was actually at the heart of many of the land deals. And I hear I've run out of time, so maybe I can say one or two things.
First round. We get twice more. Yeah?
Okay, we get twice more. Okay. I also thought that the idea that if we look too closely at land, we might forget the whole internationalization of capital and its ramifications was also quite important, because we have, as academics, we have many silos for research. There are all these trade and investment experts who can tell you a lot about WTO processes and all sorts of things happening in the world and so on. So just to begin to take those into account, to understand that there are all these global processes shaping what's happening in the countryside. And I thought was very good. Also, the idea that peasants are the biggest investors in agriculture, I thought was very profound. And also the idea that agricultural investment might be incompatible with speculative investments. And the fact that land is not like any other commodity, because it has all these common property resources and so on. And last but not the least, I learned a new a concept that might be useful, thinking about investments in land in terms of agriculture, about ground rent, thinking about them in terms of ground rents rather than investments. I thought was very critical. So,
thanks very much. Because I'm assuming that we all know each other, I didn't introduce Dzodzi Tsikata from University of Legon. Are you going to go next? How about Thomas Sikor from University of East Anglia?
Okay, so you want me to be really short, right? I guess what I've learned here, I've learned to understand a lot better what global land grabbing is about. Just kidding, I want to explain a little bit. Let's take the global. I find it really interesting to think about the global. Right? What is global about that? We heard this data by IFPRI, World Bank, by the CIRAT ILC study on the geographic extent. It's happening in many places, right? It's global also in a sense that it involves transnational actors, involves investment funds, involves corporations and so on. It's global now also because there's attempts to kind of regulate at the global level. There are social mobilizations, advocacy at the global level. So I found that very interesting. Basically this picture of global emerging as kind of being made up, an assemblage of various kinds of micro-political ecologies that come together into something global. Second, land. What is this land thing about? Very clear. We just spoke about it too. If you went to different panels, the panels were organized around that. Some people said, oh, it's not the land grab, it's the carbon grab, it's the water grab, green water, blue water, virtual water. Some people say genetic resources, some people say forest. So there's a little bit more than just land, right? Also, people emphasized the social construction of land, and it's happening by various kinds of actors, but also on our side. So if we talk about land, there's actually a lot more to it than we think. Third, grabbing. What's grabbing about? It's bad. We heard yesterday, yes. We also heard that it's not just about forceful dispossession of land. It involves various kinds of process of dispossession that I found very useful. It also involves broader processes of rural exclusion, right? It may not just be about dispossession of land. People may actually be excluded but keeping the land. So that's what I wanted to take.
Thanks very much. And now LDPI's Ben White from ISS.
For each of the three questions, I have two propositions, more or less. And whether they're fresh insights or stale insights, I don't know. The first one is, in all the panels that I went to, and in all the abstracts I read for this conference, including all the ones that didn't come to the conference, I haven't found yet a single case of any large-scale corporate land acquisition which has fulfilled its claimed developmental role of increasing food security, jobs or other benefits for rural people. So if that is so, I follow then what Ruth Dick said in, I think it was yesterday's morning's plenary. The burden of proof is now on those who favor corporate land acquisition and corporate industrial farmer. That's the first one. The second one is, in many panels, many that I went to, many papers showed us the many ways in which corporate takeovers of land fragment local communities, or exacerbate and strengthen the existing tensions and conflicts and fractions and divisions within communities. That I saw that in local politics, number 20, in enclaves and corridors, number 3, also in panel 6. Local leaders and collaborators are co-opted. Local power holders join in the what somebody called the partnerships of the powerful, become local rentiers, etc. They may acquire and trade in rights to compensation for alienated plots that others have had to sell to them, etc. Governments, corporations, donors, meanwhile, and also some peasant organizations still talk of the need to, and sometimes about their achievements in consulting with local communities. In other words, ignoring all of these divisions. So I think this is something that anthropologists and small-scale research is quite good at uncovering and unpacking, but I think there are a lot of others who need to learn about this and bear this in mind. If I haven't yet finished the 2 minutes, I have a third one for this. It would take 10 seconds. The representatives of UN agencies, bilateral donors, and other major global institutional actors who are present here, they all nodded their heads in approval with everything that the UN rapporteur on the right to food said on the first day. But I wonder why they don't say the same things themselves.
Thanks, Ben. And now we have Sofia Monsalve from FIAN.
Thank you, Ruth. Well, it has been extremely fruitful for me as well. I notice how pulled is my mind to activism, and therefore the most fruitful insights for me were at the presentation of Diane in terms of how it is not necessary to control a territory as a whole, but to exercise control, taking control of a couple of strategic points. So this was very inspiring for us to think about that, because I think we are right now we are in a phase of trying to prevent, not to let things go that far that people are dispossessed and evicted and all these things. So what are the strategic points we should also have to kind of be very strong in order to prevent this. Same with the presentation of Chile in panel, I can't remember, it was livelihoods and dispossessions, and I found very exciting the way she and their colleagues reconceptualize displacement in terms of you can't be displaced on the spot, because the whole social fabric and relationships are completely destroyed. This is very useful for us because we have a lot of tools to tackle displacement. So if we are able to show that dispossession is displacement, we might be able to use these tools. So this kind of work and insights I found very fruitful. In terms of gaps and silences, or this is the next question?
Okay. Okay. It was never the idea that these four would have a monopoly on all the important insights. So let's have about 4 or 5. If anyone has a sense that you had new insights that are important and that we should share with people who weren't in the panel in which you were, are there any additions that people would like? What are the fresh insights for you at this conference?
The green grab stuff, the global tourism thing, which I know a little bit about, kind of seriously scary. And these kind of companies which, invent the happy natives and so forth, seem to have enormous amount of both power and almost invincibility, or you can't legally get back at them.
Can be